Madison Blake, a lifestyle influencer with 2.5 million followers, walked into Judge Judy's courtroom as if she were entering the front row of Fashion Week. Her $3,000 Chanel handbag swung from her shoulder. Her phone was already positioned for the perfect selfie, complete with a ring light attachment clipped to the case. And her outfit was carefully put together to look effortlessly expensive and perfectly Instagram-ready. She wore designer sunglasses indoors, her freshly manicured nails tapping against her phone screen as she recorded her entrance. She moved with the confidence of someone who had never faced a real consequence in her entire 24-year-old life. This social media star was in court because she had taken $15,000 from a small family-owned bakery to promote their products. But instead of posting the promised positive content, she criticized their business online, calling their handmade items basic and not Instagram-worthy. She then refused to return the payment, claiming that exposure alone was compensation enough. The bakery's owner, Mrs. Joseph, a 68-year-old immigrant who had spent 30 years building her business from nothing, lost nearly half her customers after Madison's followers left cruel comments on her reviews, but Madison wasn't concerned. She had been sued before, and her father's checkbook always made those problems disappear like deleted Instagram stories. Her plan was simple: sit through a short lecture from an older judge about responsibility, look convincingly sorry for the cameras, let her father's lawyers handle the settlement, and then turn the entire situation into viral content about how she survived court and came out stronger. What she didn't realize, what she couldn't grasp with her algorithm-obsessed mindset, was that Judge Judy's courtroom didn't operate on influencer logic, and the comments she was about to make would ruin everything she had built. If you've watched this far, stay until the end. Like the video, sit back, and enjoy the story, because what you're about to see will be the most expensive insult an influencer has ever made. This comment would cost her everything. This wasn't Madison's first experience with legal trouble. Her Instagram feed was a carefully crafted illusion of luxury hotels, designer shopping sprees, and aspirational lifestyle content. But behind the scenes, she had developed a reputation in the small business community as a nightmare to work with. She had several pending breach of contract lawsuits from other small vendors who had paid her for promotional content, but received either nothing or posts so uninspired they may as well have been insults. She was known among marketing professionals for treating non-influencer business owners like props, people who existed solely to give her free products and experiences she could monetize. In one widely discussed incident among PR agencies, she reportedly referred to a restaurant service staff as props during a sponsored dinner, telling them to stand in better lighting for her photos. On her podcast, which had a modest but loyal audience of aspiring influencers, she once said that traditional business owners simply didn't understand the creator economy and needed to evolve or be left behind. She truly believed that having 2.5 million followers gave her a special status that placed her above normal rules about contracts and basic human decency. Her previous court appearances had always ended the same way: show up looking remorseful, let the lawyers negotiate, write a check that hurt but wasn't ruinous, and walk away with her reputation untouched among the only people who mattered to her followers. When Madison announced to her audience that she would be appearing on Judge Judy's show, she treated it as content, not accountability. She posted a story telling her followers to watch me handle this old-school judge, complete with laughing emojis and a poll asking whether they thought she would win. She had already planned to live-stream parts of the experience, turning what should have been a moment of responsibility into yet another monetizable opportunity. She believed her social media influence gave her leverage even inside a courtroom. imagining that her ability to shape purchasing habits among millennials and Thrazi would somehow translate into sympathy from the judge. The thought process was typical Madison. Act respectful enough to avoid contempt. Accept whatever warning or small fine might come. Leave with fresh content about overcoming adversity, and maybe even gain new followers from the attention she had already drafted the Instagram caption in her mind, one complaining that the legal system didn't understand modern business models and that she was standing up for creators everywhere. She packed her designer bag with charging cables, backup ring lights, and her favorite photo filtering app, treating the court appearance like any other scheduled event, something to document, curate, and monetize. On Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock in Los Angeles Superior Court, the bailiff announced the case, The People versus Madison, Alina Blake. Madison walked in, holding her phone at the perfect selfie angle, recording her entrance as she made her way to the defendant's table. She wore her designer sunglasses indoors, despite the bailiff's earlier request to remove them. When she finally did take them off, she did it with a dramatic flourish, as though she were revealing herself to fans at a meet and greet. She even gave a small wave toward where she imagined cameras would be, her influencer instincts unable to process that this was a space where content creation meant nothing. Judge Judy looked up from her bench with the same stern expression that had made her a television icon for decades. Her eyes swept over Madison's behavior with the sharp, practiced scrutiny of someone who had watched thousands of defendants try to perform in her courtroom. "Good afternoon, Miss Blake," Judge Judy said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who would not be charmed, manipulated, or impressed. "Put that phone away immediately." Madison looked up with her rehearsed expression of surprise, as though she hadn't heard the instruction. "Oh, sorry," she said, flashing the smile that had earned her millions of likes but would mean nothing here. "I just wanted to document this experience for my followers. They're super invested in my journey, and I always try to bring them along for everything authentic, you know?" She didn't say, "Your Honor." She didn't offer any formality. She spoke to Judge Judy exactly the way she spoke, to her ring light at home with the casual entitlement of someone who had spent years being praised simply for existing. In front of a camera, Judge Judy caught the disrespect immediately, but kept her professional composure. The same composure she had maintained through 4 decades of dealing with every type of defendant imaginable. "Miss Blake," she said, deliberately emphasizing the formal address, "you are in a court of law, not recording a social media video. Put the phone away now, or I will have the bailiff confiscate it." Madison reluctantly tucked the phone into her designer bag, though her eyes kept flicking toward it like someone separated from their favorite addiction. She shifted in her seat, clearly uneasy without the constant reassurance of checking likes and comments, her fingers twitching with the muscle memory of scrolling. Judge Judy reviewed the case file in front of her, taking her time and letting the silence stretch in a way that made Madison visibly nervous. "Miss Blake, you are here because Mrs. Linda Joseph has filed a lawsuit against you for breach of contract, failure to deliver promised services, defamation, and fraud. The plaintiff claims that you accepted $15,000 to create positive promotional content for her bakery, but instead posted negative reviews that harmed her business reputation and caused significant financial loss. How do you respond to these allegations?" Madison sighed, the kind of sigh that implied she was about to explain something extremely obvious to someone unbearably slow. "Your Honor," she began, dragging out the words as though speaking to a child, "I think there's been a total misunderstanding about how influencer marketing works in 2025. If you want to save everyone some time, we can just settle this quickly. And I can explain to Mrs. Joseph how the creator economy functions so there's no confusion going forward." Her condescending tone stirred murmurs throughout the courtroom, though Madison seemed completely unaware of the impression she was making. She continued, growing more animated as she launched into a topic she loved, explaining her own importance. "See, I did provide value to Mrs. Joseph's business," Madison insisted. "I gave her exposure and brand awareness to my 2.5 million followers. That's worth way more than $15,000 if you actually calculate the marketing value. My negative review was just honest content, and authenticity is literally my brand. My followers trust me because I keep it real. And if I had posted fake, positive stuff about products I didn't genuinely love, I would have been lying to my audience. That's not who I am." Judge Judy's expression stayed neutral. But a dangerous glint appeared in her eyes, something experienced court observers would recognize as a warning. "Miss Blake," she said slowly, "you signed a contract promising to create positive promotional content in exchange for $15,000. Did you create that positive promotional content?" Well, Madison drew the word out while trying to shape her response. "I posted about her bakery, which is technically what the contract required. I fulfilled my obligation to post content. Whether that content was positive or negative wasn't really specified in exact terms. So I used my professional judgment as a content creator to give honest feedback that my audience appreciates." Judge Judy leaned forward slightly. The contract wasn't specific about whether the content should be positive. Madison nodded with confidence, completely missing the trap. "Exactly. It just said promotional content, and technically, any content that mentions a brand is promotional. Even negative reviews create buzz and engagement." Judge Judy picked up a document from her desk. "Miss Blake, I'm reading your contract right now. Section 2. Subsection A states, and I quote, influencer agrees to create 5 Instagram posts featuring bakery products with positive captions highlighting quality, taste, and craftsmanship." Section 2. Subsection B states, influencer agrees to create a minimum 2-minute Instagram story walkthrough of bakery visit with enthusiastic recommendation to followers. Does that sound nonspecific to you? Madison's confidence faltered for a moment, but she quickly tried to regain it. "Your Honor, those are more like guidelines. In the influencer world, we have to keep creative control over our content. I can't be contractually obligated to be enthusiastic about something if I'm not genuinely feeling it," Madison said. "That would be inauthentic. And my whole brand is built on authenticity. Subscribe to Judge Stories if you believe contracts should be honored regardless of how many followers someone has." Judge Judy activated the courtroom's monitor system. "Let's take a look at the promotional content you created, Miss Blake." The screen lit up with screenshots that Mrs. Joseph's daughter had carefully saved before. Madison deleted them. The first image showed a beautifully decorated cupcake from Joseph's Bakery. But Madison's caption read, "When you try to support small business, but the quality isn't giving what it should be giving." It was followed by a grimacing emoji and hashtags like #honesty and #notsponsored. Judge Judy read the caption aloud, her voice thick with disdain. "Is this the positive content highlighting quality and taste that you were paid $15,000 to create?" Madison shifted uncomfortably. "I was being honest with my followers about my experience. That's what they expect from me." The second screenshot appeared, a video thumbnail showing Madison taking one bite of a pastry and making an exaggerated, disgusted face. Judge Judy pressed play, and Madison's voice echoed through the courtroom. "POV, you expect artisan quality and get grocery store vibes. This is why I always say, not every small business deserves to make it. Sometimes there's a reason they're small." A ripple of shock swept through the courtroom. Mrs. Joseph, seated at the plaintiff's table, wiped tears from her eyes as she heard her life's work dismissed so casually. The third screenshot showed an Instagram story where Madison had written, Some brands really shouldn't try to work with influencers if they can't handle honest feedback. If your products aren't good enough for real promotion, maybe fix that instead of getting mad at creators for telling the truth. Judge Judy paused the display. Miss Blake, you were paid $15,000 to enthusiastically recommend this bakery to your followers. Instead, you told 2.5 million people that Mrs. Joseph's products were grocery store quality and that her business didn't deserve to succeed. Madison tried to defend herself. Your Honor, I have a responsibility to my followers, to be honest. If I lied and said I loved products I didn't actually love, that would have been fraud. I was protecting my audience from wasting their money on subpar baked goods. Judge Judy's voice sharpened. Miss Blake, did you even taste the products you were supposed to promote? Madison hesitated just long enough to expose the truth. I tried one cupcake. It was too sweet for my personal taste, and the aesthetic didn't fit my brand's visual identity. So I went in a different creative direction with the content. You tried one cupcake, Judge Judy repeated slowly. And based on that, you chose to tear down an entire business that has been operating successfully for 30 years. Madison stiffened defensively. Your Honor, my followers trust my judgment. If I don't love something, I can't pretend I do. That's the whole purpose of influencer marketing. It's supposed to be authentic recommendations from people, audiences, trust not fake ads. Judge Judy signaled to the bailiff, who brought forward additional evidence. Let's talk about the impact of your authentic recommendations. Miss Blake. Mrs. Joseph's daughter stepped toward the witness, stand with a folder of documents in her hands. She was a woman in her 40s. Her eyes red from crying and her hands trembling as she presented the documents. Your Honor, she began, her voice cracking. My mother came to America with nothing in 1995. She worked 3 jobs to save enough money to open her bakery. For 30 years, she has woken up at 3 in the morning every single day to bake everything fresh. Her customers loved her. She had 5-star reviews everywhere. She planned to finally retire next year and pass the business to me. Then Miss Blake posted her videos. She handed over printed screenshots showing the tidal wave of hateful comments that flooded the bakery's social media after Madison's posts took off. Messages from Madison's followers calling the bakery trash and accusing the owner of selling garbage. One wrote, "If Madison Blake says it's bad, it must be really bad. She has such high standards." Another, "Thanks for the warning. Definitely never going there." The daughter continued, her voice gaining strength as anger pushed through her grief. Within 2 days, our regular customers stopped coming. People who had bought from us every week for years just vanished. We lost 40% of our business in the first month. My mother, who hasn't missed a day of work in 30 years, did up in the hospital with stress-related chest pain. We thought she was having a heart attack. She presented medical bills totaling $5,000 for the emergency room visit and cardiac tests. Judge Judy examined the documents thoroughly, then looked at Madison with unmistakable contempt. Miss Blake, you destroyed a woman's life's work for content. How do you justify this? Madison's reply revealed everything wrong with her worldview. Your Honor, I didn't destroy anything. If her business couldn't handle one honest review, maybe it wasn't as strong as everyone thought. Good businesses should survive criticism. That's just how the market works. Judge Judy rose slowly from her bench, something she rarely did. The entire courtroom fell silent. The air seemed to grow heavier with the gravity of the moment. Madison, still unaware of how much trouble she was in, glanced toward her designer bag where her phone was hidden, likely calculating how many followers. This dramatic scene could bring her, if only she could record it. Judge Judy removed her glasses with deliberate precision, folded them, and placed them in front of her. Then she looked directly at Madison Blake with eyes that had seen through thousands of liars, cheaters, and entitled fools. and spoke with a voice sharp enough to cut steel. "Miss Blake," she began, her tone dangerously controlled, "let me make sure I understand your position clearly. You believe that because you have 2.5 million followers on social media, you are entitled to take $15,000 from a hardworking business owner, violate every term of your written contract, publicly destroy her reputation, and then defend it by saying you were being honest. Is that an accurate summary of your defense?" Madison sensed she had entered dangerous territory, but still couldn't stop herself from doubling down. "Your Honor, with all due respect, I think you're being a little old-fashioned about this whole situation." The moment those words left Madison's mouth, the courtroom erupted in shocked gasps. Mrs. Joseph's daughter stared at her in disbelief. Even the bailiff's jaw dropped. People in the gallery leaned forward in their seats, sensing that something unforgettable was about to unfold. But Madison astonishingly kept talking, digging herself even deeper. "The influencer industry just works differently from traditional business models," she continued, her tone shifting into that patronizing lecture voice she used on her podcast, as though she were educating Judge Judy about modern society. "Contracts in the creator economy are more like guidelines because content creation is an art form. It needs flexibility and creative freedom. Maybe if you understood social media better, you'd see that exposure really is a form of payment. And my honest feedback actually had value, even if it wasn't the feedback Mrs. Joseph wanted. This whole situation feels very 2010. We've evolved past these rigid contract interpretations. The industry has moved beyond that kind of old-school thinking." Judge Judy remained standing perfectly still, except for her eyes, which had sharpened into a laser-focused stare that should have told Madison to stop immediately. But Madison, misreading the silence as encouragement, actually smiled as if she had just delivered a brilliant argument. She even reached toward her bag, her fingers instinctively twitching for her phone, imagining how she could spin this moment online. "Old-fashioned," Judge Judy repeated, her voice so quiet the entire room held its breath. "You think I'm old-fashioned, Miss Blake?" Madison nodded, completely oblivious to the danger. "I just mean the business world has changed, and maybe the legal system needs to catch up with how things work in the creator economy. We can't be tied down by outdated contract ideas when social media has transformed marketing." Judge Judy took a single step forward, but somehow her presence filled the entire room. "Let me tell you what old-fashioned means, Miss Blake." Her voice was steady, powerful. "Keeping your word when you make a promise, that's old-fashioned. Honoring a contract you willingly signed, that's old-fashioned. Treating people with basic decency and respect, that's old-fashioned. Taking responsibility for your actions instead of hiding behind excuses about creative freedom, that's old-fashioned. And if those values are old-fashioned, then I am proud to be old-fashioned. I pity anyone who thinks that having followers exempts them from basic human integrity." Madison's smile vanished. She opened her mouth to respond, but Judge Judy raised a hand, silencing her instantly. "I know exactly what you meant, Miss Blake," Judge Judy continued, her voice rising. "You meant I'm too old to understand your industry. You meant my values honesty, integrity, accountability are outdated relics that don't apply to your generation of influencers, who think likes and followers give them permission to lie, cheat, and steal from hardworking people. You meant that a 60-year-old immigrant woman who built her business with her own hands over 30 years matters less than a 20-4-year-old with a ring, light, and a sense of entitlement." She stepped closer. "Well, let me introduce you to my old-fashioned world, Miss Blake, where actions have consequences, and contracts actually mean something." Madison tried weakly to interrupt. "Your Honor, I didn't mean to disrespect you. I just meant that things are different now." Judge Judy's response was immediate and razor-sharp. "Sit down, be quiet, and listen to what different means in my courtroom." She returned to her bench, but remained standing, a stance that projected absolute authority. She lifted Madison's contract and held it high enough for everyone in the room to see. "This is a legal contract. Miss Blake, you signed it. Your signature is right here beside Mrs. Joseph's. You agreed to create 5 positive Instagram posts featuring her bakery products with captions highlighting quality, taste, and craftsmanship. You agreed to produce a 2-minute Instagram story that included an enthusiastic recommendation. In exchange for these specific services, Mrs. Joseph paid you $15,000 up front because she trusted you. She trusted that despite your youth, your social media fame, and your obvious privilege, you would honor your word." She was wrong. Madison's face had drained of color. For the first time, she seemed to realize this would not end like her past legal issues. Judge Judy continued, her voice relentless. "You didn't simply fail to deliver what you promised. You did something far worse. You weaponized your platform against her. You took her money and then used your 2.5 million followers to damage her business. You told them her products were garbage, that her bakery didn't deserve to exist, that she should be ashamed of what she sells. Do you have any idea what a blow like that does to a small business?" Mrs. Joseph's daughter stepped forward again, holding printed revenue charts. The graph showed steady, consistent income until an immediate, steep drop after Madison's posts. "Your Honor," she said, her voice trembling with controlled fury, "we lost $8,000 in revenue in the first month. Our regular customers, people who've come to us for years, stopped visiting because they saw Madison's posts and believed her. They trusted her judgment over their own experience. We had to lay off 2 employees who've been with us for over 10 years. My mother stopped sleeping, stopped eating. She ended up in the emergency room because the stress was literally destroying her. All of this because Madison Blake decided our family's livelihood would make good content for her followers." Judge Judy reviewed the medical records, revenue charts, and screenshots of the hateful comments from Madison's audience. Then she looked at Madison with pure contempt. "Miss Blake, you stole $15,000 from this woman. That is the plain truth beneath all your talk of creative freedom and authenticity. You accepted money for services you never intended to deliver. And then you compounded that theft by attacking her business and her reputation. You used your platform as a weapon knowingly and deliberately. How do you answer that?" Madison's voice was small now, stripped of all earlier arrogance. "Your Honor, I was just trying to be honest with my followers. They expect authenticity from me. If I posted positive things about products I didn't like, I'd be lying." Judge Judy leaned in, her gaze unwavering. "You tried 1 cupcake, Miss Blake. 1, you didn't sample the full range of products. You didn't offer a fair evaluation. You walked in with your mind already made up that this small family bakery wasn't good enough for your brand aesthetic. And you decided to make content out of destroying it. That's not honesty. That's cruelty disguised as authenticity." Madison attempted one last defense. "But Your Honor, in the influencer world, we have to maintain credibility with our audience. If I promote things I don't believe in, I'll lose their trust." Judge Judy's response was crushing. "Miss Blake, let's talk about credibility and trust. You signed a contract promising to promote Mrs. Joseph's bakery positively. You accepted her money. Then you violated that contract. If your followers knew you were paid for positive reviews and chose instead to post negative content, would they still trust you? If brands knew you signed promotional agreements and then deliberately sabotaged the businesses that hired you, would they continue working with you? Your entire claim of authenticity rests on lies and broken promises." The courtroom was completely silent except for the sound of Mrs. Joseph quietly crying, Madison Blake, who had walked in. Treating this like a content opportunity, was now watching her influencer empire begin to collapse. And Judge Judy wasn't finished. She had spent decades dismantling the defenses of people who believed they were above consequences, and now she was applying that mastery here. Miss Blake, she said, her voice returning to that dangerously quiet tone. You called me old-fashioned for believing contracts should be honored. Let me show you what old-fashioned justice looks like when it meets modern entitlement. You owe Mrs. Joseph the $15,000 you took from her. That money covered services you very clearly chose not to provide. Madison nodded, slightly likely thinking that $15,000 was manageable, that her father would simply write the check and end it. But Judge Judy continued reading from her notes, her voice steady. You also owe her $8,000 in documented business losses directly caused by your defamatory posts. Madison's face drained of all remaining color as the total grew. And you owe her $5,000 for the medical expenses resulting from the stress-induced hospitalization caused by your malicious actions. Judge Judy paused only long enough to make her next words hit even harder. And finally, Miss Blake, because your conduct was not merely negligent but intentionally cruel, I am awarding Mrs. Joseph $10,000 in punitive damages. That brings your total to $38,000, payable immediately. Madison's mouth opened and closed without sound, her influencer confidence shattered. $38,000, more than double the amount she took, was suddenly very real. The bubble of entitlement she had lived in all her life was bursting. Your Honor? She finally whispered, her voice breaking. That's more than double what she paid me. That's not fair. Judge Judy's eyebrows rose sharply. Fair? You want to talk about fair, Miss Blake? Was it fair when you took Mrs. Joseph's money under false pretenses? Was it fair when you told 2.5 million people that her products were garbage? Was it fair when she wound up in the hospital because of the stress you caused? You destroyed her business, her health, and her peace of mind for Instagram content. And you have the audacity to complain about fairness? Madison's desperation was on full display now. Her polished influencer persona had cracked completely, revealing the spoiled young woman beneath it. Your Honor, please. My reputation depends on my image, Madison pleaded. If this judgment becomes public, brands will see it as soon as they search my name. My entire career is based on companies trusting me to represent their products. If they think I'm someone who breaks contracts, I'll lose everything. Judge Judy rose again, and this time her expression held something that resembled satisfaction. Miss Blake, your reputation should reflect who you actually are, not the carefully filtered persona you present online. And that brings me to the second part of my judgment. This entire proceeding, every moment of testimony, every piece of video evidence, every detail of the damage you caused will be made part of the public record. Every brand that searches your name will see exactly what kind of person they'd be hiring. Every potential sponsor will know you violate contracts, steal money, and destroy small businesses for content. Madison shot to her feet, her chair screeching across the floor. Your Honor, you can't do that. That will ruin my career. My endorsements, my sponsorships, everything I've built will be gone. Judge Judy's voice could have frozen stone. You've built your career on deception, Miss Blake, on manipulating trust and breaking agreements. If your career collapses when the truth is revealed, then it deserves to collapse. Madison's eyes filled with tears, though it was impossible to tell if they were real or performative. Please, Your Honor, I'm only 20. I made a mistake. I didn't understand how much damage I was causing. Can't we seal the records or reach an agreement that protects my future? Judge Judy gathered her papers with precise, deliberate movements. Miss Blake, you are old enough to sign legal contracts and accept $15,000. You are old enough to influence 2.5 million people. You are old enough to understand that actions have consequences. The fact that you didn't bother to consider those consequences is not my problem, miss yours. You want to talk about your future. What about Mrs. Joseph's? She is 68 years old and was preparing to retire next year. Instead, she is rebuilding a business you nearly destroyed and recovering from health issues you caused. Where's your concern for her future? Madison tried a different tactic, her voice shifting into something calculating, proving. She still didn't understand the gravity of the situation. Your Honor, what if I publicly apologize to Mrs. Joseph? I could make a video explaining everything, take full responsibility, promote her bakery for free, give her the positive content I was supposed to. Would that change anything? Judge Judy let out a short, humorless laugh. Now you want to give her the promotional content you were already paid to create. Miss Blake, you may make whatever videos you want, but they will not reduce this judgment by a single dollar. You may apologize to your followers, but it will not erase the damage you caused. You still seem to think everything can be fixed with the right lighting, the right filter, and the right hashtags. Her voice hardened. But some things cannot be repaired with a ring light and an apology video. Some consequences are permanent. Madison's desperation spiked. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, ignoring the bailiff immediately stepping toward her. Your Honor, my followers need to hear my side of this, Madison said desperately. They need to understand I'm being treated unfairly by a system that doesn't understand modern business. I have a platform, and I'm going to use it to tell people what really happened. Judge Judy's expression didn't shift. Please do, Miss Blake. I encourage it. Post whatever you want. Tell your followers your version of events. Let's see whose story they believe once they can watch the actual court footage. Once they see you admit that you accepted $15,000, violated your contract, and destroyed a small business. Let's see how many support you when they know the truth. Your platform is about to become evidence of your character, not a shield from consequences. The bailiff confiscated Madison's phone before she could hit record, and her face crumpled as if losing access to her device was worse than the judgment itself. Judge Judy returned to her seat, her posture making it clear the matter was settled and any further protest was pointless. Miss Blake, she said, her voice carrying the finality of a closing door. You walked into this courtroom with 2.5 million followers, believing your social media presence made you untouchable. You call me old-fashioned because I believe in contracts, honesty, and consequences. You treated Mrs. Joseph like a prop for your content, someone whose livelihood meant less to you than engagement and likes. She continued, her tone merciless. Here is what happens now. You will pay Mrs. Joseph $38,000 immediately. This judgment will remain public permanently. Every brand, every sponsor, every potential partner who searches your name will find this case. They will see that you are a thief, a liar, and someone who weaponizes her platform against vulnerable people. Judge Judy leaned forward, delivering the final blow. You came here thinking this would be content for your followers, and you were right. But not the content you expected. You will leave this courtroom having learned that no amount of followers, no number of likes, no designer handbag, and no carefully curated image can protect you from the consequences of cruelty and dishonesty. Her voice softened, but only slightly. Perhaps one day, when you've matured and developed something resembling a conscience, you'll understand that so-called old-fashioned values integrity, honesty, and keeping your word are not relics. They are the foundation of any career, any business, and any life worth living. Until then, you will live with the consequences of believing that popularity mattered more than character. Court is adjourned. The gavel struck the bench like a gunshot. Madison Blake stood frozen, unable to comprehend that this was real. She instinctively reached for her phone, forgetting it had already been taken, her muscle memory so deeply wired that even in total defeat, she moved toward digital validation as she stumbled from the courtroom, covering her face with her hands. The cameras she once courted eagerly captured every second of her humiliation. Mrs. Joseph and her daughter embraced, crying together not from grief this time, but from relief at finally being heard. Within 24 hours, the court footage went viral on every platform Madison once dominated. TikTok filled with reaction video, shock at her entitlement, satisfaction at her downfall. Twitter exploded with hashtag old-fashioned justice trending worldwide, with thousands sharing their own stories of influencer scams and broken contracts. Instagram, the empire Madison had built, became the scene of her ruin. The video circulated with comments overwhelmingly praising Judge Judy and supporting Mrs. Joseph. Madison lost 800,000 followers in the first day alone, the collapse accelerating as more people watched the footage and grasped the extent of her misconduct. Major brands cut ties instantly. Companies she had been negotiating with dropped her without hesitation. Fashion Nova, which had considered a six-figure partnership, released a statement saying they only worked with influencers who demonstrated integrity and respect for partners. Sugar Bear Hair, HelloFresh, and Revolve issued similar statements, each one another nail in the coffin of Madison's influencer career. Within a week, Madison tried to reclaim control of the situation by posting a tearful apology video, but it collapsed almost instantly. The video was flooded with dislikes within hours, and the comment section became a harsh record of her failures. Users posted side-by-side clips comparing her courtroom testimony with her apology, highlighting contradictions and pointing out every sign that her remorse was performative. Many commented that she looked sorry only because she had been caught and finally faced consequences, never because she truly understood the harm she caused. Others simply repeated the phrase old-fashioned over and over, turning her insult toward Judge Judy into a running joke that defined her downfall. Small businesses soon began sharing their own stories of Madison's broken promises and unprofessional conduct. Within 10 days of the judgment, 2 additional lawsuits were filed against her. Her management company representing her for 3 years dropped her with a curt statement citing incompatible values and business practices. Influencer agencies that once scrambled to sign her no longer returned her calls. But while Madison's career collapsed, something remarkable happened on the other side of the story. Mrs. Joseph's bakery experienced a surge of support so overwhelming it felt like a miracle. People who had never heard of the small family shop before the trial began ordering online, visiting in person, and posting genuinely positive reviews across social media. Demand grew so quickly that Mrs. Joseph had to rehire the employees she had let go plus 3 additional bakers. A GoFundMe, started by complete strangers, raised $50,000 to help her recover from the damages Madison caused and to fund an expansion of the business. She became a local hero, a symbol of resilience, dignity, and the strength of small businesses standing up to toxic influencer culture. News outlets interviewed her repeatedly, and she approached every appearance with the same grace and humility she had shown throughout her 30-year career. When a reporter asked whether she forgave Madison Blake, Mrs. Joseph replied simply that she hoped the young woman would learn from the experience and treat people better in the future. Madison Blake's follower count kept plummeting, falling from 2.5 million to just over 1 million within 3 months. Her engagement rates dropped even faster, as most of the remaining followers were inactive accounts for people sticking around solely to watch her ongoing downfall. She had no brand deals, no sponsorships, no income outside of whatever support her father still provided, Any search of her name immediately brought up the court case, Judge Judy's scathing judgment, and countless articles dissecting how influencer culture had produced people who thought popularity excused them from basic decency. Madison became a warning to others, a permanent example of what happens when entitlement finally meets accountability. When a polished online facade collides with undeniable, documented truth. She was forever remembered as the woman who called Judge Judy old-fashioned and lost everything because of her arrogance. Sometimes, the most expensive words are the ones spoken without thought. Madison Blake learned to light that. No number of followers can shield someone from the consequences of dishonesty. And that so-called old-fashioned values like integrity, respect, and keeping one's word never stop being relevant. They endure not because they're traditional, but because their true, and truth outlasts every filter, every curated image, and every attempt to substitute appearance for substance. In the end, character matters more than content. And consequences are the only influencers everyone eventually has to face. If you enjoyed this story, you can support me by liking it and subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. Stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next video.